for this month's Q&A on Lego Serious Play and the GC Index. Broadcast is live on YouTube and on LinkedIn. Today with us is Gaylin from South Africa. Gaylin is a GC Index Master Partner and LSP lead trainer for SERIOUSWORK in South Africa. And big hello, Gaylin. Maybe you can introduce yourself and then do the introduction on my side.
Awesome. Thanks, Jens. It's a privilege to be here today talking about these fascinating tools. My name is Gaylin Jee. I am trying to work with companies to develop more innovative conscious cultures, and I try to use novel tools and methods in my work. And two of those novel tools and methods happen to be the GC Index and Lego Serious Play. So I was delighted when Jens called me up and said, how about we do a Q&A live about these two tools? So thanks very much. Looking forward to the session.
So we're going to talk about the GC Index first, but people, my common viewers probably usually know me, but as you are in different countries, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Jens. I'm based in Germany. I'm a lead trainer for SERIOUSWORK for Lego Serious Play for SERIOUSWORK in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And my main profession is basically to use playful methods such as Lego Serious Play and do some mix-ups with it. So I've experimented it with design thinking, with purpose workshops. I'm combining it with Playmobil. Exploring the method and just pushing the boundaries. And Gaylin and I have met on a community meeting, on our global exchange meeting, to be honest. And she introduced me to the concept of GC Index. So she made it with us, and I was actually fascinated and thought that's something we can do more. We can explore how we can incorporate Lego Serious Play in the GC Index. But I think people want to know what the GC Index is, Gaylin.
Should I say a few words on it? There's a bit more detail later. But in a nutshell, the GC Index measures energy for impact against a cycle of change. So we say, what if we could measure where somebody wanted to make an impact against this natural high-level business process of change and innovation, which is common to all of life and work. And if we could measure that, we can then look at it, are we competent in that area? And when you put those two things together, you suddenly get a superpower or a super skill. And really the days of bringing people to work for extra massages and extra money, who doesn't like extra money, but more food in the canteen, more days of special projects, I think those days are coming to a close. We need people to really be engaged and enjoying what they do at work. And for us, the GC Index is a method to get us there. So it's a profiling tool, measures energy for impact. You can run a profile at individual level, group level, and even entire organizational level. And there are 5 key roles. I'll show you a bit more detail a bit later. It's the only profiling tool that I use now. So clearly I'm biased. I love it. Yes, so that's a snapshot. One last thing to say is we always talk about it having 3 key benefits. The one is to increase predictability of impact, to reduce barriers to performance, and the third piece is to make better people decisions, more informed people decisions.
So what I like about the GC Index, so I'm not biased, I also use the DISC model.
Sure, not yet.
which is more about, but I like them both, to be honest, because I think where the other measures behaviors or patterns, the GC Index focuses on energy, and I think they both have their relevance, and even those can be combined. And I think in both of them you can incorporate Lego Serious Play, use Lego Serious Play to make even a better impact. Before I go into the details and say a bit about, in brief, what is Lego Serious Play, if you have any questions, though, who you on the other side of the line, just post them in the chat windows or raise your hand and I will answer. We will go into and answer all your questions live here. So first, what is Lego Serious Play? Lego Serious Play actually uses Lego Lego bricks, those little plastic bricks here, but we use them differently. We use Lego for storytelling, to build models, to answer and explore really complex questions. And we use Lego bricks as a metaphor. So we don't build houses, we don't build cars as you usually do it. We use these kind of bricks, like this red little brick here, and give them a meaning. For example, this red brick here could be a phone cell, it could be a love, it could be a sausage, very common here in Germany, sausage. So this brick could basically mean anything. And we combine these tools and very good facilitation techniques to bring people from a coaching context, maybe one person one-to-one sessions, probably we would use the GC index, maybe mostly, I think, in one-to-one sessions. And also in large group audiences, up to my largest group was 400 people. So it's a facilitation technique using Lego bricks, basically saying. So, Gaylin, so was I right, or is there anything you'd like to add?
Lego.
Just Lego.
Yeah, I think for me, what I really love about this method is that it helps to create a level playing field.
Mm-hmm.
We spend less and less time together face to face these days, pros and cons of both, but the time that we do spend together is really important. And you know what happens in meetings, there's always that one who speaks better, the clever one, the boss, the confident.
This happens. Someone's going on the mobile phone.
Yeah, or someone's sitting on a phone or a laptop for an urgent something.
Mm-hmm.
And with Lego serious play, everybody builds, everybody shares. So it's really a democratic process. And because there's a facilitator, you're creating that space for participative safety. You find this concept of 3D printing, thoughts from brain to model. You would just never access that thinking in a different way. And you learn so much about other people through the process. So I really love it for that it brings.
Yeah, and basically it's used the framework where you actually all share, or build, all share, and all reflect. So where you have 100% participation by framework, and I think that is what I love about it, and even love it in extension with other tools.
Yeah, and I think that's also obviously part of the focus for today's session. But the way that you can combine it with other tools to extend insights, make more meaning, extend sensitivities is really powerful, because Lego is so immersive. You know, people forget who they are when they start to play with the bricks. Even the ones when you come into the session, they're like, oh, I'm not very creative. I've never played with Lego before. And then after half an hour, it's laughing, joking, having fun. You've got to say, okay, stop playing with the bricks now.
I ran a demo session yesterday, and there were people in there who have never touched a Lego, or they have touched Lego bricks, of course, but they haven't run through a Lego Serious Play workshop before. And after the skills build, the first question, so skills build, for those you don't know, is that you have to bring people up to speed. So you can't just put bricks on the table and say, build something. It's a three-way process to bring people up to the same level. And after that, the build question was, build a model to show what fascinates you about Lego Serious Play. And they haven't had experience with Lego Serious Play, but they came up with fantastic models after 3 rounds of just simple questions. And it's always fantastic how fast people dive into this method. And all they need is curiosity. People might ask, why should I use Lego Serious Play? But for example, the example I always use is, if you take a word like respect. Respect has such a broad meaning. Respect can be respecting elderly people, or open doors for other people, or helping people in a code. It's really different. So, and we have values in our businesses that say we respect each other, and don't work. So because we all have different understanding of what respect is, or in the Scrum values, respect is one of them, and we don't work respectful because we all have different meanings. And Lego Serious Play helps us to explore what actually the same meaning is, so to have a common understanding of a word, of the term, of a vision, something like that. And that's one thing I really love about that. as you say, it's a level playing field.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as you're talking, I would want to build on that, excuse the pun. But this concept of listening as well, it's so beautifully illustrated through the method, because we also have a process where we check listening, and you pick on the person who hasn't been listening because you know they're not listening. And they're like, oh, could you tell us about this? And they're like, oh, I can't. And it's such a lovely, fun way to reinforce how important it is to listen to other people who don't. We're quite busy at work, so another good one.
Okay, got it. But maybe tell us a bit more about the GC index, how that actually works, and how you would use LEGO.
Yeah, should I? I do. We promised we wouldn't do any slides, and then I looked at some of the pictures, and we thought, let's just do a few. So if you give me permission to share just a few slides, I want to show you a.
You've got my permission. I think you've got the permission of the others.
Yeah, you see, if we ask for permission, then we have to. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'll just put it on present mode after I've shared it. So can you see that?
Yeah, we can see that.
So this is a tech company that I've worked with. And in the beginning, I was doing mainly leadership development work with them. And over the years, it's just sort of expanded out across the business. And we used GC Index and LEGO together. So just to context set a little bit, we're kind of more aware that the world is complicated and complex. So there's some things we feel like we can predict, control, and it's routine and efficiency. And then there's other things that just feel a bit crazy, to be honest. So small impact, a small effect has a big impact. And that feels harder to control. And in a world like this, I think we need different tools. And so that's part of the reason why we're using these different tools in synergy to get these kinds of things right. GC Index, we won't talk about the Explorer Index today, but GC Index and LEGO Serious Play. So we can try and increase this predictability of impact, reduce barriers to performance, and activate the true diversity of potential we need in worlds that sometimes feel a bit crazy. And then prioritize the right ideas, initiatives, and then actually release potential to get things done. And when we look at LEGO and GC together, we get much closer to doing this. So if we look at this case study, the finding the diverse potential and discovering the energy for impact is the GC Index piece. And obviously you want to work with your team or client to get clarity on what it is that they need and want, because often we don't do that enough, and also what the risks are. And then you bring in this beautiful LEGO method where you really get to activate that potential. So you're unpacking insights and driving new behaviors into the system. And then what I love the way this is phrased is you're actually setting people free to create the change that's needed, because when you profile in the GC Index, there's 5 different roles. And all of these different roles, different energies for impact. So some of the things that I love to do or hate doing, there are other people in the world, strangely enough, who love to do the stuff that I don't like to do. And this gives us a framework to find out where your energy sits so that we can tap that up and activate it. So there's your cycle of change on screen. I know it's a little bit small, but it's creating new ideas. It's making sense of ideas. It's making them happen. And then refining and perfecting them and making them brilliant. And then there's a role in the middle, which is about all working together. So if we have energy for impact in all of these areas, the cycle of change, we naturally become future facing. And in the past, some of these roles perhaps were less activated, especially in bigger systems. So we can ask questions like this.
Sorry, may I just ask a question here? Because for using people who are familiar with the disk model, yes, might wonder why it's using the same colors, but it's got nothing to do with disk, right?
Yeah, we do find that sometimes in the profiling where people will say, oh, I've done this one. It's I'm a whatever. And you're like, are you sure you've done this one? Because there's lots of color, lots of color models around. So with the GC Index, we've got the game changer, the strategist, implementer, polisher, and playmaker. Those are the 5 roles. Jens, perhaps I should have mentioned that. And when you profile, and I'll show you an example of an individual profile, you can ask questions like, where do I make my biggest impact in this cycle of change? How can I focus my development? How can I grow my career or build my business or scale or commercialize an idea? And how can we work better together? So often we have a relationship conflict. Whereas actually what we need is healthy task conflict. If there's no task conflict, you don't get further, you don't innovate. But you don't want that to come across as personality or relationship conflict. And with the GC index, we can diffuse that. So this is the basic model. And if I show you here, just somebody's joining. On the left is an individual profile that you would run. So you get a score from 1 to 10 in each area. And people are humans, right? So they look at this and they say, oh, I've only got 40% in that energy, and there I failed and I need to change that. And that's not the model at all. It's strengths-based. So if you have a high score in a profile, it means your energy sits there. Doesn't mean you're fabulous or competent or fantastic at that. And the same if you have a lower score in this profile, it just means your energy doesn't sit there. So focusing all of your time and impact in those 2 areas that you have low scores might not be a good idea. So that is a real profile on the left.
Sorry for again, can you jump back 1 slide, please? Because I think maybe not everyone knows what the strategy or game change is. Could you maybe explain a bit more what the strategy is?
Yeah, so the game changer energy is really about seeing things differently and doing things differently. So the underlying psychology of these game changers is I'm looking for the rules in the world, because when I find those rules, I want to break them and change them. So they tend to have a higher than usual appetite for risk, doing things differently. What makes this energy really useful in a team or an organization is where most people are seeing straight ahead. The game changers are seeing these outlying ideas and possibilities and opportunities. Mm-hmm. That makes them super useful from a competitive point of view, because they're spotting things that other people don't see. But it also makes it sometimes hard for people around them to understand what they're talking about. So they'll be saying, I don't understand this idea that Jens says, I don't know where we got it, and it doesn't fit. So there might be a bit of, in a team or an organization, you need to work with game changers to break those ideas down so that the system can understand them. So that is the game changer. The strategist is also a big picture creative thinker, but they tend to be a little bit less risk ready than the game changers. So the underlying psychology of this role is about connecting the dots, making sense, seeing the bigger picture. Let's look to the past to predict the future. And as leaders, they tend to lead through this coherent sense making of ideas. So they try and connect the dots so that they can create structure, so that they can create the future. And you know these people because they're always saying, let's take a step back. How does this fit? Why are we doing this? What's the purpose? So good energy to balance the game changer. The implementers are pragmatic and action focused. So you know they're implementing energy because they say, right, how are we going to do this? By when? What's the budget? How do we plan this out into an idea that we can deliver on? So as leaders, they're saying, how does this idea get translated into a commercially feasible, tangible result on the ground? And they've got high energy for impact, which is nice. They really get people unstuck and get things moving. The polishing energy is about refining, perfecting, improving. This energy is about believing that everything can be better. So it's really motivating and inspiring to work with these polishers when they're seeing this future that's different. This energy in overdrive can be quite fussy, fine detail, critical. The implementing an energy in overdrive can be a little bit impatient because they want to move to action. Strategist energy can be a bit lost head in the clouds. And the game changers, you say, where are these people? Because they're always off doing their own things, their own ideas. You can see each of these positive impacts also has a kind of a derailer if this energy is just on the loose. The playmaker is such an interesting role in the middle. We call this the social glue in a team or an organization. And these people have a really fantastic understanding of and energy for helping other people to shine. So they will bring a team together and people together in the right roles, doing, with the right skills and competence to achieve a task. So they tend to get things done through other people, but they like to seek harmony and consensus. And they're really top functioning playmakers. They really get into a conversation and unpack conflict. So they get teams moving and on board through that, which is, we call it building social capital, the bonds of loyalty and trust. And you can very quickly see, if I now flick back to the second slide, is if you had all of one kind of energy in a team, and you'll see why this is relevant when I talk to this case study, if you only have strategy energy and implementing, but you had no energy for doing things differently or for bringing people on board or for learning lessons and reviewing and the fine detail, you would see that there would be gaps in the total output. So we work with individuals to unpack where their focus for activity would be, but also where the blind spots, where do we pay less attention to? And you want some input from all of these different areas. The other question I get is, what is the perfect profile? And I say, no, there is no perfect profile. And people say, you sure? And I'm like, yes, there is no perfect one. It's working with what you have and looking at who you partner up with to drive a game changing. So this is an individual view. This is a team view. So what's really nice is we can scale this data. And this is the case study team view. And you can even scale it up to an organizational view. So in certain industries and sectors, you might want a bias towards a certain energy for impact. So again, there's no perfect organizational or team view. I realize that I'm so deep in this. You could wake me up at 2 o'clock in the morning and tell me to talk about GC index, and I could. So if there's any jargon that I'm using or anything you have a question about, please feel free to put up a hand, put it into the chat. Okay. So I'm not going to go through this in much detail, but these are the kind of questions you can start to ask with this GC index data. And what I like to do is I use these questions in Lego Serious Play builds to really unpack the data. And this is an example of how, you can go away and profile and we can say, okay, you're a strategist implementer, but then so what? You get your nice report, you have a nice review session with your coach, or maybe you have 2 or 3, and then the report goes in the drawer. When someone asks you in a year's time, what profile are you, say, oh, I think it's the blue, but I can't remember, was it DISC or was it Insights or was it GC Index? You don't know. And what we want to do is we want to push that a little further and say, let's help people to own their data, to make sense of it, and to identify what they're going to do next so that something changes, because otherwise there's no point in profiling. So if you look at these questions, we can start to ask these questions. What's my potential for impact? What are my blind spots? How can I develop? From a team perspective, what do we need from this team? What's underpinning their success? And big data, do we have the right talent profiles in our organization? What culture are we creating in this business? Is there bias? Where is our creative talent? Are we all strategists, implementers, and no game changers because they're too disruptive? Those are the really forward-looking questions we can ask. Okay. So if I return to this case study about the tech company, this was the heads team. So you can see all of the individual profiles on the left and the top. And this is the aggregate team profile. So now when you look at this profile on paper, it tells us a very strongly game-changing team, takes risks, does things differently, spots new opportunities. And it's kind of an inventive leadership team. So then they lean into the fine detail, how we're going to make this a reality. And it would also suggest that you take people on board and take them with. But I think what you'll be noticing already from looking at this, look here, there's a note here. So in terms of higher scores, there's no one who brings high energy for strategy, connecting the dots, taking a step back, understanding why we're doing this. And also there's really pragmatic implementing. How are we going to do this? By when? Who's going to get it done?
So you would say they are highly innovative, but they hardly get things done. So they don't get it down to market.
Well, you see, this is exactly the kind of question we would ask them in a team session. You put up this profile and they look at it, this clever, very clever, dynamic bunch of heads in a very, very successful business. And they look at it and they go, see what's happening here. Sometimes we miss the low-hanging fruit. Sometimes we're reinventing the wheel when actually we could just tick this off and get it done. Sometimes we need to look to the past, what's happened so far in the business and how can that inform what we're doing in the future. Instead of, and I joke with these guys, I say, you guys are all shiny, shiny, new, right? Mm-hmm. Everything is about the new stuff. And yet they're very successful. What we then did is I built out a 5-year strategy using Lego Serious Play, where we in year 1 and where we in year 5. So we've got the year 5 targets and they're super ambitious, big growth goals. And they built out models. And then I worked with the delivery team who supports these heads. And they built out year 1 to year 5. Now look at what the delivery team looks like. I don't know if they're individual profiles, but look at this team. So what is really fascinating for me is this business is super successful. And I can see why now. It's because there's a lot of energy for getting things done in the delivery team that supports them. And attention to fine detail and still this people focus. So these teams intuitively work beautifully together, right? And that's why the business is so successful. But one thing that we didn't quite think that was going to come out of our Lego series play goals is that the delivery team, when they booked year 1 to year 5, in year 1, the one person had just one brick. And year 5, there was this huge tall tower with lots of trees and everything on top. And there was a big blank space in the middle. And in that blank space, he had this beautiful clear ball from the Lego series play set. And I said to him, I said, what is that clear ball? And he said, well, this is a crystal ball. And I said, tell me more. And he said, well, who knows how we're going to get from year 1 to year 5? It's kind of a mystery. And the whole team laughed at that. But what became really clear is that these guys are so good at thinking about the new, big, ambitious, bold plans and rushing ahead. And these guys are saying, that's great, but we need to deliver this stuff. How do we do that? And the Lego series play goals was such a great way for this top team to understand that for the delivery guys, they needed to unpack in much more detail what sits between years 2, 4 in that lead up to year 5. And they hadn't quite seen it, and they hadn't quite internalized it in that way yet. But when they saw the models, it was so clear. So what this leadership team has now done is spent a lot of time breaking down those ideas. They've also started to activate different potential in the team. You see here is a profile with a big, strong 8 here. So where is our low-hanging fruit? What are we missing? What are the quick wins? Where should we not be reinventing? And what they've also done is based on this lower energy for strategy here, or that strategic proclivity, which is connecting the dots, a little bit more risk averse, leading with coherent ideas. They've activated that potential before through these profiles. So what they're doing is they're mapping out their vision for the strategy in a lot more detail, and they're communicating so much more than they ever thought was necessary. Because the big game changer energy is about people must get this. It seems natural to me. And yet people around them are saying, actually, we don't know. We don't know what you're talking about. So bringing the Lego series play together with the GC Index gave us this really tangible, concrete secrets around unlocking pieces. Those very big, I mean, that's quite wordy, but they gave us some clear actions that the leaders could start to drive into the system to make for an even more successful business. So the fact that there's 0% on strategy, is that a problem? No, it is what the team is, but they do work to activate that energy in the second and third highest scores. And the business continues to use Lego series play as a regular method. In fact, I'm working with them next week in a session to unpack next phases for the business. And one of the units in the business has seen a lot of growth lately, and we're going to unpack some of that growth with that team using Lego Serious Play to make sure that we get all of the ideas from the business, and also so that we don't lose this game-changing energy. Because what you find in businesses is that people with a high game changer proclivity might sometimes leave because they don't feel like they have enough room to play and to take a bit of risk. So that would be a shame for this business. They're a reward-winning business, really, really great. And for them, Lego Serious Play is also so fun because it's something different. Instead of sitting in front of a slide deck or in a more traditional team building or leadership development or strategy planning section. Yes.
When you used in those different teams with the different GC indices, was there did they both react the same way on Lego Serious Play, or could you see a difference in the energy towards Lego Serious Play?
So there was a very good facilitator, Jens. So they all, once they'd all been through the skills builders, they all did, I mean, they loved it. They loved the method. They did engage. What I do find, and it's quite fascinating, and I want to run more sessions to see if this is just me knowing the GC index proclivity before they build, is that I do find that the different roles will focus on different elements or different responses to the build challenge, and you can sometimes see that coming through. So, you know, not exclusively, but the polishers are building more detailed models. They're more considered. there's more elements in them.
Mhm.
When you, I don't always ring a bell, but when the time for the build is over, they're never finished. So, yeah, so you do see some themes like that coming out from the models.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
We have a question in the chat window by Michelle. How would a team with a low strategy activate their strategic thinking?
Yeah. Good question. Do you want me to answer that one?
Yes, please, if you can, using the GC index.
Yeah, so I mean, what I would do, so for example, in this team, if you can see on the top left-hand side, this is actually the CEO, and this person has moved into an MD position. And if you look, they actually do have, so this guy's got a second energy on for strategy here. And there's also strategy potential here. So even though there are some lower scores, there's also some higher scores. So strategy, that strategic energy on the GC index is also about taking time to stop, pause, look at the past, to go into the future, consider different points of view, approaches, etc. So when I sit with this team and the work that I do with them, in a way, what we're doing is we're creating that time to reflect and take a step back and see the bigger picture through the sessions that are facilitated. So that's one way. And then what we're doing is trying to make sure that when we facilitate, we are getting people who have strategy energy to participate and contribute. The other way is if you're working with individuals, you can help them to activate that strategy potential. You can look at skills and competence, because remember the GC index doesn't measure competence. So maybe there's some, maybe they could be more aware of contextual patterns and trends, or maybe they need to attend some industry events. That's kind of strategy inputs. You could work one-on-one with that person to get them to think about what they could do to activate that potential. And also what I find is with the GC index, if you've got I have seen shift in the strategy score going up and down as people become more confident. And sometimes you might have slightly lower scores in a profile, and when you work with that individual over a series of coaching conversations, you can activate potential, and then when they're building competence, that energy for impact goes up. Mm-hmm. So probably a three-pronged approach. Set time for reviewing and reflecting and seeing the bigger picture. Work one-on-one with individuals who show strategy potential.
And as I've learned is that although you're low in this energy, it doesn't mean you don't do it. It costs you more energy. So if you have 100% of your energy, you probably would invest most of your time in that thing that you actually strive for. Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes we profile someone on what they have energy for and what they're competent at is different. So you might be fantastic at that strategy proclivity, but if you spend all day, every day doing that, if you don't have energy there, you will want to go home and rooms in your eyes because you will not be activated. So that doesn't mean you can't activate that potential, that competence in a meeting that you're sitting in. You probably shouldn't do too much of it, otherwise you'll get bored and leave, which would be a loss to the system. So for me, for example, what helps me sometimes is to use my leading energy to use in the energy that I'm lacking. So for example, I have a 9 in polishing. So, and I, for example, I'm not very good in other stuff. So I try to use the polisher energy to help me to do the work that where I have less energy. For example, PowerPoint slides. When I have to do slides, sometimes maybe I do over-engineer them.
Just a bit or a lot?
Some say so, some say so.
Depends who you ask, I guess. And I think this is the beauty of this GC index, is we realize that if you have a high score in one area, it might be that sometimes you energy is a bit in overdrive in that area, and we can laugh about that. We laugh about all of the energy in overdrive, all of these profiles. But if we're aware of it, we can get feedback on it and take steps to understand what the risks are of doing that, and is it a potential derailer? So my leading energy is strategist and polishing. So that is. So you'd use the strategy to take a step back now and then and get out of the polishing detail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I implement things, I use polishing energy to polish it, to polish the implements.
Spoken like a true polisher, you see. We try not to type too much with this profile, but it does happen. Just this last slide here. So there's quite a lot going on in that slide, and it's not big enough for me to show you, but right in the middle there is that crystal ball. So when this delivery team pulled all their models together, you see right in the middle, they've actually put that on stilts because they wanted the heads team to really understand that this clarity between year 1 and 5, the how of how we do things, the polishing and the implementing is really important for them to do their best job. And so they put it saliently in the front top of that model. Look how everybody's smiling. This is what I also love about these methods, and also in combination, is that people, we want to have fun at work, and we can do serious work in fun ways. And these methods,
No, we can't have fun at work. We can't. No, we can't. Gaylin, what were the biggest benefits of using Lego Serious Play in the work?
From this case study?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it promoted some insight and understanding that we wouldn't have got to in such a short time in quite this way. And I think it helps the leaders to understand where they might need to focus so that they could liberate this team to do its best work. The business moves fast, this business. It always has done, it always will. So, it is that kind of context, and you would assume that a delivery team with a strong implementing polishing, how would that fit in this business? But it's actually an essential anchor core. So just better understanding of the business, more understanding of what sets people free to do the best work, maintaining the pace and high performance of this business, some key insight into what the leaders could change in order to keep up that pace. Better working together, more healthy task conflict instead of relation conflict. And it's this, you end up doing team building and through this process. So lots more insights into how they would communicate. Yeah.
And what was most surprising when you used that?
Most surprising. I'll tell you what's most surprising from a session I've just run somewhere else is that with the GC Index and Lego Serious Play is that there is a real need there's a real curiosity around understanding self better and others better in a working environment. And the session that I ran almost got swallowed up only by the GC Index, and we didn't go to shared model building, we only did individual model building, unpacking the GC insights. There were so many questions, curious, positive questions about self and other. I have to go back and do another session with them. We didn't get through half of the work we wanted to. I think it just surprises me how much people do want to pause and understand a bit more so that they can work better together, understand what humans they're working with, what's driving them, what they need to do their best work. So, yeah. So it surprised me. My design must still slow down when I take these two methods together. You need time. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any questions from your side, those who are listening, viewing? Are there any questions? Okay. I have another question, Gaylin. Gaylin, if someone is now interested in how to either learn the GC Index or wants to have the GC Index and Lego Serious Play in his team, how can they actually do that?
Well, if they want to learn more about the GC Index, both myself and Jens are accredited practitioners in the tool. So you could approach either of us to run a profile on you, to see how you show up on the profile. And both Jens and I are part of a handful of practitioners globally who are accredited in GC and Lego Serious Play. So it's long been when I came across the GC index and when I was trained in Lego serious play, I've often seen the links between the two because my strategy score is dominant on the profile, you see, always connecting the dots. So I've wanted to bring these two methods together for a long time. So we're gradually training people up in both methods. So I can train in GC index as well, accredit in GC index as well as train you to use the Lego serious play method. So if you're wanting to use them just as a curiosity and profile yourself or run a solution for your own team or your client, Jens could do that for you. I could do that. We've got a few more dual facilitators on this call, like Michelle, Helen. But if you were looking for to pick up these skills and tools to use in your own organizations, then Jens trains in Lego, so do I, and I can accredit in GC. So it would be one of us to contact.
Yes, and if you want to learn the GC, if you want to be a trained, what's the name? A certified GCologist.
GCologist. We get so many laughs around this. Our colleagues on here have got some naughty words for that, but we're not going to open the floor for him now.
We don't want to go into that. But
it's a GCologist is what they are called when you're trained to use the instrument.
So I was trained by Gaylin, and I always can recommend her as a trainer. So if you want to learn how to do this, if you want to use it in your company using Lego Serious Play, contact either Gaylin or me. I will now post in our contact details on LinkedIn in the chat window. So I'm happy to connect with all of you. And we are approaching the end, but are there any other words or any other questions you'd like to ask?
Yes, could I ask a question? John here.
Hi, John.
Hi. It's fascinating stuff. It seems to me that the Lego Serious Play can really pull out kind of the invisible and make the invisible visible. It's fabulous. I can see the potential is really enormous. So a question around the Lego Serious Play, in a sense, do you see it, would you describe it as an event or as a series of events? And then if it's a series of events, I'd be interested if you could describe a little bit more about the follow-up and the events that follow up on the initial session.
That's basically a good question. That's a very brilliant question, John, because it depends, as always. So we from SERIOUSWORK, we always go from the objective. So if the objective can be achieved within one workshop, it's just one event. But most of the problems are severe. So when we do a change project, for example, my business partner and I, we do a change project or work on purpose. We don't only use Lego Serious Play or the GC Index. It's a set of workshops that we do until we have solved the issue together with the clients. So it's a set of workshops, set of events. So it depends. So does this answer your question a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Because to me, it would seem there's so much potential in the process that, would you be teaching people in the Lego Serious Play steps on how to even follow up themselves on a weekly or monthly basis? Or is that not really part of the initial?
So we train people in facilitation of Lego Serious Play. Lego Serious Play basically is not rocket science. You can basically read the book, but it gains its power by facilitation. And Lego Serious Play always itself answers the question of what do we want? What do we want to achieve? For example, vision. How do we get there is something you have to follow up afterwards, after the workshop. This can be done by the facilitator, if an external facilitator becomes a consultant, or can be done by the company itself. But Lego Serious Play follows in the workshop itself, it follows a structured process, a really structured framework within. But a workshop itself doesn't solve a problem. It can always give answers, but if you don't follow up on them, it's like every other session. That's independent method, doesn't depend on the method. If you don't follow up, everything is just waste of money, waste of time.
Thank you.
Very welcome. Any other questions that you'd like to have answered? Okay, so then I just say thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for spending your valuable time with us. Gaylin, thank you very much for being with me today, being with us. Thank you very much for being on the internet, being live with us, and hope to see you soon. And you have got our contact details. Just stay in touch with us. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Art.